and welcome back to my channel. It is absolutely lovely to have you here. If you don't know me, my name is Rachel and I make videos on a variety of topics, everything from book reviews to poetry analysis to kind of social commentary talking about intersectional feminism, atheism, pro-LGBTQ plus rights. I talk a little bit about my experience with neurodivergency, and I also kind of talk about Fundie content creators. I kind of started out doing a lot of atheist content, and that's one of the things we're going to be doing today. So it's been a little while since I've spoken about the Fundie married couple content creators Paul and Morgan, but recently they have been making this series called 24 Hours With, in which they chat with other Christian content creators about topics that they might not all agree on. Their latest collaboration is with Girl Defined, more specifically kind of mainly focusing on Bethany from Girl Defined, who is someone that I've spoken about quite a lot here on this channel. Cheeky bit of self-promotion before we get started. If you like the makeup look I have going on today, it's a little bolder than usual, it's quite bright. I'm trying out some new stuff. I got a few new makeup products and I created this look with it over on my second channel and gave these products a little bit of a quick review, so if you want to check that out for yourself, you absolutely can do. But for now, let's jump into this video. So, for a little bit of background and my thoughts on everyone involved in this series. This bit of the video was scripted before I even watched the Paul and Morgan Girl Defined collab, so this really is just meant to be like a bit of a preamble. If you're not interested, then feel free to skip to the timestamp on screen right now, or just jump to the next chapter of this video. Now, in terms of this 24 Hours With series and all that it's kind of aiming to do, for all I thoroughly dislike Paul and Morgan's really harmful, bigoted beliefs, I actually think this series is a really, really good idea. Surrounding yourself with people whose beliefs differ from yours can really challenge you and help you grow, and even if you don't agree with the other person and you don't come out of the conversation agreeing with them, I think listening to their side of things can sometimes make you more certain of your own beliefs and convictions, which is why I don't think you should just shut yourself off to other opinions. I think it's really good to understand where the other side comes from, even if you don't agree with them. It is one of the reasons that I quite like to cover fundies and people of all other religions, because it's good to be challenged and try and learn constantly all the time in our lives. I think this series is a really small but refreshing step forward from Paul and Morgan, and I really do have to commend them for even trying this, you know? So as I said, their latest guest in this series is primarily Bethany from Girl Defined, but it also features her sister Kristen, who runs Girl Defined with her, and Bethany's husband Dave appears in it as well. And Girl Defined and Bethany, as I said, are people whose beliefs and content I have covered quite frequently on this channel, more frequently than I would like, if I'm being honest. Too much, some would say. It's me. I would say it's too much. But they are absolutely fascinating characters. I guess at first it was just kind of fun to be a little bit snarky about them and be like, you know, ha, look how much they're saying, But then after the first video, I genuinely took an interest in them. Make up my mind about if I think they're nice people or not. They have this very cheery demeanour. They're very like bubbly and lively, but honestly, I think under all that, they're just quite judgmental people, and I don't think I'd like to meet them. But that's just my little opinion. I'm sure they think they're doing good, so, you know, good intentions and all that.
So for me, when it comes to most things in life, I want like black and white answers. I'm very black and white, and I want to know what's right, what's wrong. Just tell me what to do and I'll follow it. And when it comes to makeup, I kind of wanted the same thing. Like wear this, where, you know, you can wear lipstick but no eyeliner. Okay, great, I can do that. Just give me the guide and I will follow it.
And I've spoken about them being silly and being like wishy-washy in some of their views, and for having some seriously outdated views on dating and marriage and just being a woman. I've criticised them for all of that. But in the back of my mind, I've always been like, well, you know, they're living lives that obviously make them happy and they're not really harming anyone, so, you know, they can't be that bad, right? Yeah, I was wrong. What a lot of people don't realise is that along with their incredibly cringy YouTube channel, Girl Defined actually have a blog as well. And the wonderful Kim messaged me on Facebook to send me a couple of their blog posts that she thought I might be interested in.
And you guys know Kristen, right?
Not that big of a deal. But there's one is really hard because honestly, advising you, like, we can all see.
Used to be a model, totally honouring God with her body and all that. She, it turns out, has some pretty intense views about gay people. And she quite likes writing about it. Because, you know, being cringy is one thing, being homophobic's another thing. Trying to spread that homophobia throughout the world, that's a whole different level. So I figured we'd have a little chat about it today, you know. It all started back in 2014 with a blog post titled The Gay Pride Movement and Their Sneaky Agenda.
And Kristen, I find, is a difficult one to form a full opinion on, because on the one hand, she seems more extreme and hateful than Bethany, but on the other, she doesn't post as much as Bethany does. So Kristen is the sister who posted all or most of the homophobic blog posts that I uncovered on Girl Define's website all the way back in May 2018. Kristen is the one who seems to be more forceful in promoting books like Jackie Hill Perry's Gay Girl, Good God, which is another book I reviewed on this channel, which is focused on why you need to suppress your sexuality if you're gay or bi and just, you know, shut it down and marry a man. Very, very harmful book. But strangely, beautifully written. Jackie Hill Perry is a very talented writer. Kristen is also the one I've seen speaking out quite a bit against trans rights. Very often, she seems to really hate drag queens for some reason, which I don't understand. Drag is brilliant and wonderful, and I love it. It is this wonderful mixture of art and performance combined and at its most fun. But as I say, Kristen is also in general a lot quieter on social media. She doesn't post as often. Now she seems to be a lot more focused on parenting and kind of living a slightly more private life. And this overall gives me really conflicted feelings about her. On the one hand, like, I'm not going to go digging up dirt on someone just for the sake of it and trying to criticise someone who is trying to stay in the background and stay quiet. I mean, like, if she is staying quieter and not spreading as much hate, then that's something surely we should celebrate and embrace. But on the other hand, there is that chance that she is still just as hateful and bigoted, and she's still saying and doing the stuff and hurting people, but we're just not noticing as much, which is a bit of a scary thought, isn't it? So, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how she comes across in the parts of this Paul and Morgan video that she's in, but overall, I'm not sure what to think. Bethany, on the other hand, is someone who I am, sadly, far, far more acquainted with. I have watched more Bethany Beale content than I think anyone ever should. I have watched and reviewed her 2 big main sex courses. I even ended up doing this big deep dive into the evolution of her content in my video, The Saga of Bethany Beale. Bethany is a complicated woman, and there are things about her that I really, really respect. She is ambitious. She seems to really want to learn about the things that she's interested in. She clearly has a passion for business. She's a little socially awkward, which a lot of people mock, but I personally really, really relate to, because if I was making the kind of content that she does, where she's dancing around on camera and stuff, I would be that awkward too, you know? I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't be. I would look exactly the same as she does. And she also clearly has a lot of self-confidence in a lot of areas, which again, I really respect. However, Bethany also has a lot of really bigoted and harmful views, which we can't ignore. And just because, you know, she's ambitious in business, that doesn't stop her being incredibly harmful to a lot of people. One of the other big problems as well is that she's so misinformed on a lot of topics she speaks about, and at times this is real willful ignorance, which can of course be completely dangerous. I would say that in my experience she hasn't been quite as overtly homophobic as Kristen, but it's definitely still there. But she has definitely been overtly transphobic a hell of a lot, and that's something that I've spoken about and called out on a number of occasions. I think the biggest, most obvious example of it was back in June 2021 when I made a video covering a whole series of disgustingly transphobic Instagram posts that she made. She's wrong and she's harming people, and it needs to be called out. All that said, we have seen changes in Bethany's content over the years, and we've also seen changes in her values and beliefs. She's been exploring her relationship with her own sexuality, she's been developing her views on modesty, she's even started to question and push back a little bit against purity culture in general. The latter's been a frustrating source of back and forth for me, because sometimes it seems that she gets it and she really does want to help people and she realises the harm that purity culture does, but at the same time she's kind of still unwilling to call out purity culture as such, and she's unwilling to name that as the problem, and she still perpetuates some of the harmful views that purity culture kind of taught her and instilled in her content, if that makes sense. So she's making baby steps forward, but she's not quite there yet. I said in another video that I filmed recently, and I'm not sure what order all of these videos are going to be released in, because I'm working on a whole bunch at the minute, but I said in another video that I'm a big believer in the idea that people can change, and we absolutely should be giving them the opportunity to change. I think people can grow and become better people, and I don't think, even when someone does harmful stuff, or even when someone does helpful stuff, I don't think any one person is ever all good or all bad. I honestly think any growth that we see for the better in people like Paul, Morgan, Bethany, Kristen, I think that's something we should be encouraging and celebrating. Small steps forward don't erase the harm they've done in the past or the harm they continue to do, but I think it's important to give people second chances, because that's how the world becomes a better place. And we have to think, like, okay, these people have done hurtful, harmful, bigoted stuff and they have these views, but do we want to just exclude them and cast them out and allow them to keep stewing in their hate and keep perpetuating this hate they feel for other people? Or do we want to try and encourage them to actually become a part of the conversation, a part of the world, to help them understand that these people that they've hurt in the past are human beings and they deserve better? They deserve kindness. Do we want to encourage them to care about other people and be productive, supportive members of society? Or do we want to just cast them out and let them keep being hateful? Because I know what side I fall on. I guess where I differ from a lot of people is that I believe in rehabilitation over just punishment and exclusion when it comes to these things. That's not to say that each individual has to forgive someone who hurt them, and I think there are some cases where rehabilitation isn't enough. For example, in cases of, hurting children, abusing partners, and violence and that sort of thing. There's definitely nuances to this, and I don't want to be making any blanket statements here, but I do think in the case of Kristen and Bethany in particular, what we have to remember is that these two are a product of their upbringing, and that these harmful and bigoted beliefs that they have been ingrained in their heads for literally their entire lives. At the same time, we have to recognise that they are adults now and they do have a choice over whether they continue to believe these things and feel this way, or whether they now want to start examining these beliefs and questioning them and maybe changing their actions based on what they find. This sort of thing is a choice that we all have, and I think if an adult is being critical of their own beliefs and still coming to the conclusion that they need to spread hate, then that is something that we can be critical of, and that is something that I have been critical of them for before. But I also want to give them a chance to examine their beliefs and realise, damn, I was wrong in the past. I don't want to think that way anymore. And I think if we see someone doing that, we should offer positive reinforcement of that. Don't know if I'm making any sense. All that said, I'm very much speaking in hypotheticals here, because sadly, when it comes to the bigoted views like the homophobia and the transphobia, and also some examples of racism and things like that, we haven't actually seen any remorse for these actions or beliefs from Kristen, Bethany, Paul, or Morgan. Especially not Paul or Morgan, who sadly seem to be getting more and more hateful as time goes on, and that really concerns me. That said, while I can't come to a conclusion for Kristen, Paul, or Morgan, I don't actually think Bethany Beale is a bad person. I think she's genuinely trying to help people in the only way she knows how. The problem is, that is harming people. Paul and Morgan, on the other hand, it's harder to know what to think of them, because I kind of feel like, having watched a lot of their content, they seem to almost get enjoyment out of being righteously angry towards people and putting people down in a way that I've never really seen from Kristen and Bethany. I feel like instead of being motivated by wanting to help people, with Paul and Morgan, most of the harmful stuff that they promote and talk about and push seems to be motivated through hate and anger and selfishness rather than well-meaning ignorance. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a clip of Paul and Morgan just uplifting someone for the sake of being nice to them, or because they really believe what they're saying, or, you know, promoting a cause that didn't harm people in some way. I've never seen that from them. I don't know. Anyway, that's just a preamble. I don't know if any of that made sense. I feel like I'm rambling a bit. What I'm saying is, I hope to see them all improve and do better, and I don't necessarily think Bethany in particular is a bad person. I just think she's done bad things, and I would like to see her change and grow. I would like to see them all change and grow, and I thoroughly believe they all can. It's just a matter of if they will and if they want to. Okay, let's watch Paul and Morgan's video.
The division between Christians online is immense. In this series, we will press into tough conversations, disagree with love, and humanize the person behind the screen.
Join us as we discover the real lives of some of the most influential Christian figures.
Okay, so at this point we're like 3 seconds in, and does anyone else find it kind of ironic that their intro screen looks a little bit like the trans flag? Come on, Paul and Morgan, say it with us. Trans rights are human rights. Nice to know you're on our side. So the video opens with a bunch of like random shots of Bethany at home in, also, I'm sorry, but like this house is huge. This looks like a mansion to me. Now that might just be because I'm English and from a working class background and our homes are tiny, but like their entire living room looks bigger than my whole flat.
Okay, let's find where's the story of David.
The first bit of dialogue we get is actually interesting though. So Bethany and Paul talk about men's modesty, which isn't a topic which comes up very often. So I do respect it being brought up here because it stops there being a double standard. Most of the time it's about women being modest so you don't tempt men. In a lot of religious circles, and not just Christianity, but we see it a lot in Islam as well, this idea that women have to be modest so they don't tempt men and cause them to sin is so pervasive. It reduces women down to objects. It takes so much agency away from men, and ultimately it's a tool of control used against women. Whatever a person wants to wear should be whatever they are comfortable in, and whatever is appropriate for the setting they're in. So, you know, don't turn up to a wedding in muddy overalls or something, you know? But other than that, people should be able to wear whatever they want and it not have an impact on the people around them and how other people treat them. I have to say though, I think this is the first time I've seen men's modesty brought up in any kind of video like this. And it's interesting because I think it's mostly because in these circles, women aren't really thought of as being sexual beings, even though we absolutely are. A lot of people dismiss this idea that women experience sexual attraction visually, when for a lot of us we absolutely do. And so for this reason I think this idea of men's modesty is kind of ignored or overlooked. Now I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying men should cover up so women aren't tempted by them, because I don't think we should be saying that about anyone. But what I am saying is it's refreshing to see a Christian not have this double standard where it's one rule for women and one rule for men. I am interested in hearing Bethany's reasonings here though.
Did you already talk about modesty? No? Okay. Men's modesty.
I mean, men's modesty in our household has come a long way. There was like not that long ago, maybe like 2 years ago, I didn't want Dave to leave the house or like work out without a shirt on, swim without a shirt on. I just thought like, I don't want ladies seeing my man's big muscles. But it's like a change of perspective. It's more like he does it. It's okay to be an attractive person. You don't have to like hide your body completely, like to be modest. Not like necessarily where you're just like going around naked, but like just because you are attractive doesn't mean that's a problem. So now he runs and swims shirtless.
So, not that I want to put words in her mouth, but it kind of sounds to me like Bethany sort of realised this idea of you need to be modest actually sprung, especially in her case, from jealousy. This idea of I don't want other women looking at my man. And I actually think this is exactly why a lot of men want women to cover up as well. It's from a place of insecurity and jealousy and control. So seeing Bethany grow here and realise that, oh my god, actually, like, this isn't something I have to worry about, and therefore that's affecting her own views on her own body and her own relationship with modesty as well. that kind of growth we're seeing here, I think, is really, really great. She seems to now understand that just because someone is attractive or someone finds someone attractive, that doesn't mean there's any actual threat there or that anything bad is going to happen. That shows real growth on her part, and I kind of wonder, like I say, if it's also what's led to her clearly changing views on modesty for women as well. It's annoying though, because like just as this conversation's kind of getting interesting, it just cuts away to Bethany talking about coffee and everyone ordering food, and I don't know, this video annoys me because just as the interesting conversations get going, it cuts away to something else, and it's very frustrating to watch.
Well, we'll get some tacos. It's like a random coffee shop, but it's like one of the best.
Paul loves kombucha, and I want to please my husband.
Good man.
I think more time is spent talking about kombucha than on the modesty topic, which was more interesting to me. I don't know, maybe I just don't like these random asides because I'm not a fan of vlogs in general, but here we are.
You, from talking to you briefly, would be the type of Christian that I would push back on. Like,
All the time. Well, you're not the only one.
say like, yeah, we started hanging out, and I was like, hey, Dave, just the cussing, man, like, why are you cussing? And then I maybe would quote a Bible verse, like, let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't hear what he said. Did he just cuss at me?
Shut up, mother.
Oh, wow.
When someone says, well, what does the Bible say? I typically will hear a certain type of what I would call biblicism underlying that, a theory of the Bible that often we just take as self-evidently true. This is what the Bible is. A lot of this stuff is actually, it's more difficult when you actually get down to the conversations, I have found. It's easy for each side, oh, you're a fundamentalist, oh, you're a progressive. It's easy to kind of hurl like, oh, progressives are just relativists, or fundamentalists are just dogmatists. But the reality is, I think we all have beliefs that we think are true, and we all have relativisms operating as well. When your view is one that the Bible should just be this clear thing we all sort of have access to, and the Holy Spirit just teaches us what to believe, well, you got tons of groups out there who all claim the Holy Spirit as their teacher, coming to different conclusions.
Now, I found this segment super interesting because Dave is literally pushing back here on exactly what Girl Defined promote in their videos. And I never thought I'd say this, but I kind of side with Dave. And actually, I ended up finding this throughout the video. I felt I was siding with Dave a hell of a lot. And it's interesting because a lot of the video actually kind of feels like Paul, Morgan, and Bethany versus Dave, which is not what I expected, but yeah. I wish these clips hadn't been cut so much so we could actually hear his full train of thought, because this is something that I'm interested in hearing him explore more. So yeah, I feel like this was the start of an interesting conversation that just never really got going. But I definitely agree with what he's talking about here in terms of like the religious stuff. Like, it seems like a basic thing to say, but when you look at religions around the world, there are so many people who are so certain that their God is the only true one, the only real one, the only correct one, and that their holy book is the only true, real, correct one. And as an outsider, we know this can't all be true. As an atheist, I believe none of them are true and no gods exist. But I do have to say that I thoroughly respect a person who has explored multiple religions and multiple belief systems and been like, you know what? This is the one that makes the most sense to me. I feel like this text should be interpreted in this way, and is constantly willing to grow and learn and adapt what they know and think and believe. I do respect the hell out of that. I don't think Dave is quite at that point yet, but he's definitely a lot closer to that than Bethany and Kristen have ever been, since they only ever come back to in their videos, yeah, but what does the Bible say? They don't look at any other sources in the world other than the Bible.
Me, at least, and then you see the splitting with the secondary issues, and that's, you know, one of the goals of this series. But yeah, man, you're a deep guy. Have you ever, you're familiar with the expression, don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out?
I've heard a version of
I feel like some deconstructionists would fit into that.
Paul's just really not holding back here with the insults, is he? Very uncomfortable to watch. And then just when it seems Dave is going to reply, the clip just cuts off. it's frustrating to watch. Now, I know Paul and Morgan have an extended version of this video over on their Patreon because they want people to pay for it, so that's maybe why this stuff will be included. But as viewers, or as a viewer, I just find it kind of like annoying and frustrating to feel like you're finally getting into an interesting bit of a conversation, and then, you know, your interview has just been challenged, and then just you get nothing. It just cuts away. I want to see that actual back and forth. I want to see the differences I want to see the differences in opinion. I want to hear the why of why they both feel that way, and I want to see them both challenge each other. Like right now, having heard what I've heard, I definitely side more with Dave, but only because I already shared an opinion like that. I want to actually be challenged. I want to hear Paul say, yes, but have you thought you might be wrong because this, and this? Have you considered this evidence and this evidence? Instead of Paul just sitting there going, yeah, but if you think that, you might be dumb. We're only 6 minutes into this video, but already I'm so disappointed, and I can say now it does not get better. This whole video feels like kind of awkwardly spliced together snippets before moving on to just nothing. This video almost feels like lots of little teasers for something that we never get a payoff for. Like now, Dave and Paul share a bath. I don't care. I would have happily done without however many minutes of this to get like 30 seconds more of the last conversation, you know? I don't care about this. Then, after nothing happens, it cuts to Paul and Morgan being featured in a Girl Defined video. Kristen is here now too. The video almost immediately cuts to after filming a collab for the Girl Defined channel, and Kristen starts talking about how it's so interesting to see how Paul and Morgan work behind the scenes, and to talk about conflicts in marriage just before you film. Just give this a watch.
We just wrapped up the podcast. How we feeling?
Yeah. So good. It's so interesting, like being together in person and like getting to talk about our similar experiences, especially when it comes to like negative online experiences. Like, we don't often have that camaraderie of like, wow, someone who understands and gets us.
It's just so fun to get like the behind the scenes of y'all's whole inner workings of how, because we know how we do things at Girl Defined, and it's a lot of similar stuff, different, but like getting the behind the scenes and talking about, you know, like the conflicts in marriage right before you record, how you are through those before you talk about the Lord.
I don't think that I could do anything like this with my sister, so.
Really? You and I, we've had some this is like the best, probably the last 2 years or so are the most peaceful and the best Girl Defined has ever been between us.
Yeah.
We went through a time where it was like a few years ago where we were like, we have to find a counselor. We have to find someone who specializes like in like ministry counseling. Because
family,
we just
working together, relationships.
We just could not like see eye to eye on like how to operate the ministry and like what to do, and we just both grew and matured somehow through that, and it just has.
And we
like,
changed the way we operate.
Yeah,
we like established some very good, healthy patterns of.
So we didn't actually end up doing the counseling, but it's been like,
It's a great idea.
Just sometimes the thought.
Awesome.
No,
it's like really
seriously,
amazing.
yeah.
It's like that's so I feel like that's why we can keep going, because we've gotten to a place where we are functioning super well.
I don't mean this as a slight to Bethany, but it sounds to me like she has needed a lot of therapy in the last few years in particular. Like, she's getting individual therapy. Her and Dave have had and continue to have marriage counselling. Her and Kristen were considering family and ministry counselling to work together. It is a lot. And I'm a big believer in counselling and therapy. I think it's a wonderful tool, and it's not something to be ashamed of at all. But to need it in literally every area of your life like this to such an extent, like, I think this should actually be a bit of maybe an amber flag for Bethany to realise that her upbringing was maybe not the healthiest, her parents are not quite as wonderful as she continues to tell us they are, and that she's actually been left with a lot of trauma and problems into adulthood. Again, that's not something to be ashamed of, but I just think it's something to be aware of and maybe stop ignoring. Does that make sense? Like, and I'm not just speculating here, we know Kristen and Bethany's parents are horrific. When their older brother, Michael, came out to talk about the abuse he faced at the hands of their parents, especially their mother, like, it's heartbreaking stuff to hear his story and his experiences, and now seeing Bethany need all this help with living and existing, it's just, leaves me concerned. I am glad they can get help, though, don't get me wrong. Absolutely.
I want to commend them, though, on the record. They were here before we started. They were some of our inspirations and helped us get the ball rolling, and they are still going hard, and that is rare in this space. This is not an easy space to have longevity.
In ministry alone, but then
That's
also
so funny.
YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like for us, it's been like having.
He's still coming. Like knowing why we're here, because it's like now that we're both moms, you know, like that's a priority and that's really important. And so we've had to really adjust. So we actually have 2 other people that work for us.
Like even for us, something we've kind of struggled with at times is we've been on the platform for 7 years. We're not the same people.
Yeah.
And even like some of our views, like I would say, hopefully, and in so many ways we've grown and we've matured as believers, but some of our views have shifted a little
for
bit.
sure.
Girl defined now versus girl defined 5 years ago. You guys have gotten some pretty heavy criticism, and you guys know, honestly, can we just talk about that? They have been through it. Like, man.
Like the most hated Christian channel out there, I feel like.
Really?
That sounds, I mean, that's not to say like you guys just get it, man. And well, so one thing I'm wondering, Modesty. You guys have some videos where you are now versus where you were, say, 5 years ago. And actually one of our patrons said to ask you guys that. Have your views changed on Modesty?
We have a great podcast that we recorded on that. What was that one? Oh, it was called How Our Views on Modesty Have Changed.
There we go.
They have changed. But I think they've changed more so in the fact that we were painting very black lines in scripture of like modesty is this, it isn't this, and drawing these lines and these boundaries and saying this is what's biblical and this is what isn't. And we've come to realize the scripture doesn't actually draw those lines that we were drawing. It talks about modesty and women should care about it, but not in the ways that we were drawing lines. Like our version of modesty wasn't 100% biblical, I guess. So coming to terms of just realizing like our perspective was our opinion, but not biblical truth. And we've even changed in some of our opinions of what we believe about modesty and our views on just, I don't know, like what would you add?
Okay, I do have to really commend them for saying this. Lots of respect there. They were incredibly black and white in their thinking before, and at times very, very hypocritical. I remember one of the first things I ever responded to of theirs was this clip where they were talking about, like, you know, they were reading a Bible passage about, you know, and don't adorn yourself with gold and not with braided hair, and they're sat there with gold jewelry and braids in their hair and stuff like that, and it was hypocritical but also very like strict in their thinking, and it's nice to see they've grown from there and then and that kind of thinking.
From 1 Timothy 2:9-10, and this is something I'm sure you've all heard, but just listen up because the context is really interesting. It says, likewise also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works. And so you might think, okay, wait, is this verse saying we can't wear like pearls or costly attire? Like, what does this mean? But when you dig into the context of this verse and you get at the heart behind what is trying to be communicated in this passage, what we see is that this was being written actually and directing towards the Christian women of that day, back in the day, in their culture, in their context. And what was happening is that there were a lot of women who would dress in ways, the pearls, the costly attire, that's referring to a lot of the ungodly women of the day. Really, the temple prostitutes would often dress in these kind of ways. And so essentially what this passage is saying and trying to communicate to even us as women today in our modern day is, hey, God's women, Christian women, should dress and act and look a way that represents holiness, that represents purity, that represents women who are set apart, women who reflect God in a beautiful way, but do it in a way with purity and holiness and hearts of humility. We can take that context and say, okay, for today, our outward appearance, God cares about, more so he cares about our heart. We believe, and we've come to the conclusion that there are ways that we can enjoy makeup in a fun, God-honoring way that still portrays the purity and holiness that God is wanting for Christian women.
However, we also have to acknowledge that this doesn't fix all their problems. Bethany and Kristen have simply changed how they define what is and it isn't modest. They still value modesty to an unhealthy degree. They still believe women have to be modest, it's just how they define modest that's changed. And as Emily Joy Allison writes in her book, #Church2, How Purity Culture Upholds Abuse and How to Find Healing, this is where she says the problem lies. So she writes, Regardless of how a community defines modesty, the moral imperative for women to dress a certain way in order to avoid leading the men in the community into sinful behaviour is ubiquitous. Almost without fail, the reasoning given for modest dressing is as follows. When you show too much skin, men who are visual creatures can't help but start thinking sexual thoughts about you and may even become physically aroused. It's in their God-given nature to do this because they are visually stimulated in a way women aren't. Once you've been made aware of this as a woman, if you continue to dress in a way that provokes sexual thoughts in men, you are morally culpable and part of the problem, since men should only be thinking sexual thoughts about their wives. Now it's a very small hop, skip and a jump from this line of reasoning to blaming a woman for her own assault because of what she was wearing or not wearing when it occurred. So even though Bethany and Kristen have changed how they define modesty and how they choose to be modest in their own lives, they're still upholding modesty as this pillar that they, everyone needs to be modest still, and other people need to be modest, and they're still pushing modesty, which is inherently harmful. So while they have made positive steps forward in regard to modesty, they're still really, really far from the finish line. I also wish they'd gone into a bit more detail about where their previous views came from in regards to modesty and how they came to change. That's what I want to hear about. So again, it feels like we're only hearing parts of what could have been a really interesting conversation. Bethany does give us a little more insight into why her views have changed in this next clip, but I kind of wish we'd heard that from Kristen as well. And Kiwi wants some attention, so watch this clip and I'll be right back.
Well, I mean, we don't even think the same on it exactly now. Like, we've changed. I think especially for me, like, getting married. So I was, like, single for much longer than you. And so I had all these ideas of, like, oh, modesty and men and, like, all of this stuff. Yeah. And then getting married to Dave and him sharing more of, like, his actual thoughts with me. And then me really asking myself, why do I feel like this certain thing is modest and this isn't? And something for me even recently that I've really realized is that I had this idea that almost like, if like attraction was almost like immodest. And so for me, I wanted to wear more like looser clothing and not really show the fact that I was a woman, because I thought, oh, that's like part of the problem. And almost like even as a married person, that you should never even think anyone else or any other human is like attractive. And so I've realized like, it's okay. Like, I can be out in the world and see a man who is attractive and just be like, oh, that's an attractive man, and move on with my day. I don't have to be like, oh my gosh, well, or that Dave will see obviously there are other beautiful women in the world, you know? Obviously what he does with that is a different story, but like he can see other women in the world and be like, they're beautiful, and move on with his day. So that has been like part of the growth journey for me. And I think that's contributed toward some of the change in conversation as well for us.
First things first, and this may be a little controversial, but I actually really like seeing these moments of Bethany and Dave being supportive of each other, or being like positive influences on each other and learning from each other. We saw a few of these towards the end of my Saga of Bethany Beale video, and it was like, you know what, actually surprisingly enjoyable to watch them just interact with each other in a way that showed they genuinely cared for each other, just chatting together, them checking in on how they were. It genuinely surprised me. So
pregnancy is a lot, and so making sure that you're doing everything you can to like support your body so that you have that natural ability to get excited.
How are you doing postpartum?
Way better than I was with Davey.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Good.
Yeah, postpartum with Davey was really hard. That was probably the hardest time in both of our lives as a married couple. Yeah?
Yeah. Again, it's kind of nice to see Bethany here talking about what a good influence Dave's been on her, and, how they've helped each other out and helped each other grow and stuff. But as for what Bethany's actually saying, this probably won't surprise any of my viewers, but this is actually super common amongst women who have grown up entrenched in purity culture. And it really does kind of like get ingrained in people's heads that there's something objectively wrong with being a woman, with being attractive, with feeling attraction. It sexualizes almost everything there is about being a woman, and then shames people for simply existing as a woman in the world. A book that I've mentioned and referenced in my videos before, and one that I really, really recommend, is Beyond Shame, Creating a Healthy Sex Life on Your Own Terms by Matthias. And I'd like to reference that again here, because in it he writes, Purity is a vague term used by Christians of all stripes to restrict and control behaviour, sexual and otherwise. Purity culture focuses on a simple core message for young people: do not have sex before marriage. In many cases, the purity messaging prohibits any kind of touch or anything that might even spark arousal. He then quotes another book which I recommend, which is Pure: Inside the Evangelical Movement That Shamed a Generation of Young Women and How I Broke Free by Linda K. Klein. Again, another great book, I really recommend that, but I actually really like Matthias's summary of her thoughts in that book here, so I kind of want to share a reference to a reference, if that makes sense. So he writes that Klein writes that purity culture disproportionately affects women, teaching that women are not only responsible for managing their own sexuality, but are also required to monitor and regulate the sexuality of men. Purity culture tells women that through the way they dress, the way they move, and the roles they play in churches and households, they're the ones responsible for making sure the men around them won't stumble sexually. As a result, it cultivates an environment in which victim blaming and rape culture flourishes and results in debilitating shame for hundreds of thousands of women. And this is exactly what I think we are witnessing here in this video. We're seeing the effect that growing up in this world has had on Bethany and what she's going through as she's trying to muddle her way out of it. In his book, Matthias talks about how when people, especially women, have grown up having this idea that sex and sexuality is shameful pushed upon them, it seems the opposite of this is, to go from being full of shame, the opposite of this is shamelessness. And this opposing direction is what sometimes people swing too far into, or what they fear swinging too far into. So it's definitely the lifestyle that Kristen and Bethany seem to push as other to theirs. So, according to Matthias, and I'm paraphrasing here, shamelessness when it comes to sex can be just as unhealthy as feeling too much shame. It can be used to cover up trauma and pain with a front of, well, anything goes. He says that in reality, to have a healthy relationship with sex, we shouldn't be shameless, but shame-free. The latter implies that we no longer feel shame, but we still set our own boundaries, our own limits, and we can safely explore as much as we want to without feeling any shame. I feel like a lot of the time when Kristen and Bethany, especially Bethany, talk about kind of the consequence of leaving purity culture and people being other to them and, what secular people do and that sort of thing, they go straight into, well, everyone out there, everyone other than us must be shameless. If you reject purity culture, if you reject our ideas of modesty, if you don't save yourself till marriage, then you must be sexually shameless. You must be doing whatever you want without limits and without boundaries and without this and this and this. When in reality, most people who are other are not shameless at all, but are simply shame-free. We do still have boundaries, they're just ones that we set for ourselves, and therefore we have a healthier relationship with sex in general. Does that make any sense? I may be rambling a bit. Matthias's book, though, is a really, really great book, and it's one I've recommended a couple of times now, and I will continue to recommend. It does sound to me like Bethany might well be on her way to that point of reaching shame-free rather than shameful or shamelessness. And if so, that's seriously great, but it's hard to say for certain. Only she can really tell us if she is or not, I do actually want to replay you part of that clip though, and I want you to watch Paul's reaction here, because when Bethany is talking about how her and Dave can see and appreciate that other people are attractive without it causing problems or jealousy, look at Paul's face. He looks so uncomfortable, and I find that very interesting. I'm not sure how to interpret it, but it's interesting, and I'd like to hear your thoughts down in the comments.
And so I've realized, it's okay. I can be out in the world and see a man who is attractive and just be like, oh, that's an attractive man, and move on with my day. I don't have to be like, oh my gosh, well, or that Dave will see obviously there are other beautiful women in the world, know? Obviously what he does with that is a different story, sure. But he can see other women in the world and be like, they're beautiful, and move on with his day.
Let me go a step further. Look at someone like Joshua Harris. You guys are obviously familiar with Joshua Harris. He looks back at his past, and he went so far as to make an apologies for it, say this was harmful, because my views on purity culture, they caused harm to people, and now he's like one of the leaders in the deconstruction movement. When you look back, are you like inclined to say, man, we caused harm because we made it look too black and white, or are you more like, no, we still believe that, but we could have worded it a little better?
Now, I do think this is actually a really excellent question from Paul, and good on him for asking. Just before we get to Kristen and Bethany's reaction to this, I will say this. This concept of needing an apology to forgive someone is a complex one, and I can't speak for everyone, you know? Some people need an apology from someone to be able to forgive them and move on. Some people don't. Sometimes just seeing that someone has changed and grown without a verbal apology is enough. For some people, seeing someone's actions is essentially more of an apology than a verbal one could be. For some people, a verbal apology doesn't really mean anything at all because, you know, without seeing actions, what does it even mean? It could be fake. So I think there's a way to see that people have grown and learned and changed and recognise they've done wrong and want to do better without necessarily hearing the words, I'm so sorry, from their mouths, you know? I feel like, just personally, I'm at a point now where I'm kind of just done being angry with people. And, like, I find it a bit draining. Not everyone. There's some people who, like, for their behaviour towards me, yeah, I would absolutely want an apology, and I kind of feel it's necessary at this point for healing. But in other examples, I'm just kind of, like, past it, you know? Like, remember the whole Gabby Hanna drama a couple of years ago, when she went on this Instagram rant calling me, like, an ugly bitch with no talent, no intelligence, blah, 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 and then me and my dog got all those, like, death threats? Like, my dog got death threats from Gabby's fan. Insane. I was angry at that for quite a while, for understandable reasons, and mostly because they went after Kyra and I'm super protective of her. Whereas now, a few years have passed and I'm like, you know what, it's fine. She was going through some stuff, she kind of took it out on me, she was clearly unwell, and now she's doing better, and she's clearly got away from whatever was messing her up, sorted her head out, and it looks like she's doing really well for herself. So, at this point, I feel like, yeah, I'm kind of past it. I've forgiven Gabby. I don't need her to give me any kind of, like, verbal apology, because I can see her behaviour towards me has changed, so that's fine, I can move on, you know? I understand that that way of thinking isn't how everyone else is gonna heal and move on from stuff, you know? I think if you personally need an apology for something that has happened, or that you've seen happen, or that's happened against you, then that's absolutely fair, and you're more than entitled to ask for that and need that and whatever. But if you don't, I think that's okay too, you know? I just thought that was an interesting point to bring up. I don't know what people are going to say, but yeah, I don't know, that's just kind of where I'm at now with life and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I've forgiven Girl Defined for the harm they've done and the harmful stuff they've published in the past. I'm just saying, because of course I haven't. They haven't acknowledged that it was wrong, and they haven't done anything to change it, to actively, you know, make up for the harm they did. So, you know, there's no reason to forgive, essentially. But I am saying that if I saw an actual change from them and an acknowledgement that they were wrong, why am I finding it so hard to speak today? Then I'm pretty sure I would forgive them without needing to hear the words I'm sorry out of their mouths, but I wouldn't expect anyone else to forgive them on those terms. Everyone's got to figure it out for themselves, you know? I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling. That's just where I'm at. The Josh Harris thing, this is what... I'm so tired. Why can't I speak? Come on. Pull yourself together. I'm still getting bad cramps and a hell of a lot of pain from my first, like, period with the coil in, and I'm struggling a bit, and it's making my head foggy. And I am in a lot of pain right now, and that's why I'm not speaking very well. I'm so sorry. But when you gotta work, you know? I'm sure you guys can relate. Okay, Josh Harris. Let's talk about this quickly because this is an interesting story. Back in something like 1997, Josh, who at the time was this still single 21-year-old guy with no relationship experience, no training, no education in theology or relationships or anything like that, wrote a book about relationships. This book was called I Kissed Dating Goodbye, and it basically ended up as being used as almost like a purity handbook by Christian parents to encourage their kids to remain pure and save themselves till marriage and do relationships in this one very specific way. It caused a lot of harm. It really hurt a lot of people. Fast forward to about 2019 though, and Josh Harris comes out to say that he thoroughly regrets writing this book and the harm it's caused. His whole worldview has changed, his lifestyle has changed, he himself is getting a divorce now, and he's like, crap, I am so sorry for everything. Although apparently not quite everything. Emily Joy Allison criticised him for saying years later allegations of covered-up sexual abuse at the church Harris pastored would arise. Allegations that Harris has still not, in his recent apology tour, addressed sufficiently for survivors. So, bringing up Josh Harris here is an interesting one because it seems like he has done a lot to apologise for some of the harmful things he did, like writing the book and creating this whole culture that hurt thousands and thousands of people, but at the same time he's not addressed very specific allegations about individuals that he hurt in a different way in the environment he cultured at the church he worked at, and that's not good. Yeah. Oh my god, sorry. I'm in a lot of pain. Let's get back to Girl Defined though and see what their response to Paul is.
We haven't issued an apology.
No, we haven't. In our podcast episode, it was us just saying this is how we've grown. This is how God has changed us and even our understanding of like interpreting scripture and being careful to not put our own interpretation on what scripture is saying and adding to it. But even looking back on like the way that we approached modesty, we would even say, I remember, even in our little booklet that we wrote on modesty, we were very intentional to say, we're just showing you examples of what we do, but this isn't what you have to do. The podcast episode we did on it was us just saying, like, this is how the Lord has grown us. We've always, from the beginning of Girl Defined, I said, go to the word yourself. Like, even with the modesty, we were like, go to the word.
Honestly, this answer is a little frustrating for me because having been there, they did tell people what to do. Like, I mean, they even played this clip of them doing exactly that and giving people strict instructions on what to do, and Paul is like, well, I liked it.
Well, can I just say I saw the Project Modesty video. I think it's been removed. And for some of the reasons you were describing.
It can be really hard to find modest shirts right off the rack. But with a little creativity, you can make a lot of them work. Low-cut shirts. You can add a cami underneath, you can add a scarf on top, or a button-up underneath. And shirts that aren't fixable, just ditch them. A good saying is, when in doubt, go without.
I kind of liked it. I got it, because you guys did get specific.
So it feels like they're still a bit reluctant to admit they did anything wrong or harmful, which is super frustrating to see. It's like nowadays when Bethany in her sex courses talks about the harm that purity culture did and blah blah blah, and purity culture this and this and this, but she never acknowledges her role in perpetuating that. Oh, it's frustrating because I'm trying so hard to give them the benefit of the doubt and to... I want to like them. I want to see improvement. I want to see them doing better. And they just keep disappointing me again and again and again, and then they just make it worse. Listen to this.
I appreciate you guys saying, like, you know, we've grown in this way, but we cannot expect a Girl Defined apology tour.
It's not gonna happen.
All right.
And what does it fix? What does it fix? Right.
What does it fix except for appease the haters, which that's not our goal.
No, they want you on the stake after that. They don't like.
We will share how we've grown
the
and
steak
changed.
fire. What is it called? The steak.
Oh, no,
The grill.
They want you gone.
Like, are you serious right now? I know that I personally said I didn't need an apology from them for some of the stuff they've done just to see them grow, but honestly this whole dismissiveness on their part of like, what does it fix, is concerning. The act of being willing to apologise and acknowledge that you've done wrong and show that you're making changes from that shows that you can acknowledge that you've hurt someone, that you care about their feelings, that you care about their well-being, and that you would like to make amends. That's what apologising does. You don't apologise just to get someone off your back. You apologise because you feel bad you hurt them. Do you know what I mean? A little apology can go a long way because it genuinely demonstrates care for another person. And I don't think any good person is going to want you on a stake for that. You know? It does worry me that Bethany doesn't seem to understand the point in apologies, you know? Like I say, it's not about stopping someone doing something or getting them to think a certain way. You should give an apology regardless of whether you think it's going to be accepted or not, because giving an apology shows that you respect the feelings of the person you hurt. Even if you didn't intend to hurt them, you're saying, hey, I understand that my actions, even if not intentional, hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. I've messed up before and thought I was doing one thing to help people and help a situation, and like it's, you know, been interpreted the wrong way, or it's caused something which has caused hurt to people. I'm like, you know what, I am sorry for doing that. I'm absolutely sorry. It was never my intention to have anyone hurt or anything like that, but I'm sorry that it ended up that way. And then just to disappoint us even more, Bethany throws in some unnecessary homophobia and makes this statement about deconstruction, which is interesting because she seems to, throughout both this video and her other content, use deconstruction and the idea of losing faith or losing belief interchangeably, and I think that's a bit of a shame.
Burned at the stake.
Yeah, they want you to do what Josh Harris did. They don't just want you to apologize.
Yeah.
They want you to completely deconstruct and have rainbow flags and do what he's doing.
Yeah.
So
We're not doing that.
No intentions to deconstruct.
No,
From girl to fine.
not gonna happen.
Deconstruction isn't a bad word, it's not a dirty word. It doesn't mean that you're losing your belief in God. It doesn't mean you're becoming an atheist. It's quite simply, let me just Google a quick definition for you. Here we go, the process of systematically dissecting and often rejecting the beliefs you grew up with. So, honestly, not even always rejecting beliefs. It's just a matter of kind of taking apart what's been indoctrinated into you and saying, hang on, where's the truth in this? Where are the lies? Where's the proof for this, this, and this? What do I think about this? Why do I think this? Where am I at now? I think when Christians use it synonymously with losing faith or becoming an atheist or anything like that, it does a lot of harm, and it kind of stigmatizes this idea of, you know, questioning your beliefs. I think for a lot of people, the act of deconstructing, while it can cause some to lose their faith, can actually strengthen their faith for others, because now they're not just blindly believing what they've been brought up with, but they're thinking about it for themselves and thinking, well, actually, these are what my beliefs are, this is how I feel, and this is why. Now I thoroughly understand it. You know?
What did he shock y'all with?
Yes.
Yeah.
They've shocked us.
We were shocked.
What was shocking?
How different you guys are.
Yeah.
Because you seem very much at peace with him working through this stuff and figuring out like where he stands on things. What do you think? Why do you think you're so at peace with that?
I mean, from the beginning, honestly, like a huge goal of mine in marriage was to not try to control my husband, and I had seen that done like so much, and it seems like there's a happy marriage on the front, you know, all of these conservative values and all of this, you know, like going to the word and stuff, but then behind the scenes there was like a lot of anxiety or just like a lot of dysfunction. I didn't really care about Dave like putting like, I mean I did, but like I didn't want him to just appear a certain way for like my own ego or image or whatever. Yeah. Dave is someone who like is constantly seeking outside advice. So I like, to me he's a man like that is like very full of integrity, and so instead of having an interest in reading certain books or learning from certain teachers and me just being like, I don't like that, don't show that to me, I want to be more like inviting of that and being like, hey, I want to know, share that with me. And to be honest, like who he is as a man now, and like his, like, I don't know, how he loves me, how he treats our family, his stability as a leader has only improved. And so like I feel like I have a better life.
Yeah.
So I guess it's something I'm not really afraid of, because I just, maybe some of this practical stuff that he's learning now was missed as he was growing up, and so it's almost like rewinding, and although not all of it's like from a Christian perspective, to me it seems like it's been really beneficial in his life. And now we don't listen to all the same things and read all the same things, and we don't approach how we if I want peace in my life, I am very much like go to the word, and like my relationship with Christ is where I find that, and that's not always the case for him, but like it doesn't bother me that much, which sounds crazy.
I literally have no complaints about this bit though. I think it's lovely and it shows a lot of maturity from Bethany, and it's actually really nice to see this from her. Genuinely.
Yeah. How do you feel like it will affect kids, like your all's kids, as they start to get older, start asking questions, like they ask him questions and about the Bible or about just like, you know, whatever, something very stereotypical that like Dave and you might see totally different on. How do you guys think you'll approach that?
Yeah. Well, he actually initiated and led us switching churches. So we were going to kind of like a basic Bible believing, non-denominational type of church. And it's the church I grew up in. I was very comfortable there. And he wasn't super excited about it. And he really was the one who initiated us leaving. So now we go to a small Lutheran church, which was so different than anything I grew up with. And it's a place where I'm so excited to raise my kids and to raise a family. And I feel like our kids are in a wonderful place. Like, although we might not agree on everything theologically or how we go about practically getting help, like, he to me is someone who is like very much has like a true, genuine faith. It just looks really different from mine. But I view my kids as having like an incredible dad, and I think they're going to be like extremely stable and not manipulated into the faith, or not like coerced into like, this is, you need to look this way and act this way, and then when they get older, like ditch it. I think they have a dad who's extremely authentic and genuine, and in the long run, to me, that's like going to go so much further than him looking like this, you know, ideal Christian man, whatever that is.
And again, this section here, I genuinely think this is great from Bethany. I think one of the things I've spoken about quite a lot is the problems with certain religions indoctrinating their kids from a young age. I'm looking at you, IBLP, and various others. So the fact that Bethany and Dave together can see that this isn't a good thing, and they're actively wanting to avoid it in their own kids, that's something I really respect. Morgan's response, I respect less so.
That makes sense.
Yeah, very interesting.
Morgan's like, no. No.
Hey.
Like, one of the things that I have always praised my brother and sister-in-law for is they're like the only religious people in my family. They're the only ones who go to a church and believe in God. You know, no one else does. But they're the only ones, and they are like raising their kids to sometimes go to church and stuff. But now that they're older, they actively ask their kids every week, hey, do you want to go to church this weekend? If not, we can have someone stay home with you and whatever. So they have a choice whether they want to go or not. The kids haven't been baptized because they believe that the kids should be able to make that choice when they're older, if they're baptized or not, if they believe this stuff or not. And I think that's really great. They're still allowing their kids to be taught about all different kinds of religions, including the ones that they believe, and allowing the kids to make up their own mind. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I don't understand how anyone could be mad at that. So I really respect Bethany and Dave for this perspective. Morgan's response, I respect less so. I find myself genuinely concerned for Morgan's kids based on this alone.
Between the two of us, for sure, like, who's influenced the other more, like, in our relationship, for sure Dave's influenced me more. Okay. Like, I've for sure become more like him. Yeah. And so I guess less kind of like my family, less how I was raised.
Yeah.
Is that hard for your family to see?
I think they're just like, oh, Dave and Bethany, they're random. I
don't. Two crazy kids.
Everyone so far has been like super respectful and like very much like, you know, as adults, like respecting each other's views. Maybe if we were like ditching the faith or something, but it's like we're still super strong Christians. It just looks different in some of the gray areas and secondary issues. I want my views to be challenged because I don't just want to live in a certain way or believe things because I've always believed them and they're like not actually true or beneficial. There might be a better way to live.
Yeah, once again, this is actually brilliant. I can't believe how much I'm praising Bethany at times here. Bethany from a few years ago would not have said this, so it's really nice to see her growth. And it really does seem like over the last few years, despite it being very slow, we have seen Dave having quite a positive impact on her in the last few years, and I think it's kind of brilliant. I do thoroughly respect her for this. Well, see, this is why it's so frustrating, because I keep being like, oh my god, she's saying all the right things, this is brilliant, I commend this, and then like my head flashes back to her being like, no rainbow flags, and other homophobic and transphobic stuff, and I'm like, ugh.
I have a feeling that like a lot of people who watch your stuff, who hate watch your stuff, are like, she just lives in an echo chamber, she's not surrounded by anyone with differing opinions. I think they would be shocked to know. Like, your own husband has very drastically different opinions than you, and you're living under the same roof with him and being challenged, and you guys are pushing each other, and I think that's very interesting to learn about you. I didn't know that.
So earlier in this video, I was singled out as being a hate watcher, apparently. They mentioned hate watchers and showed a few clips of a bunch of us. There was me, There was Jen from Fundie Fridays, who was a wonderful, wonderful person, and I love her to bits. There was Cody Coe, who, yeah, actually, I think Hate Watcher is kind of a accurate term for the content that him and Noel Miller made. Yeah. Jacqueline Glenn was on there. Jacqueline Glenn, I think, was one of the first people to actually bring Girl Defying to everyone's attention. She was the one who inspired me to talk about them, so yeah. But again, wouldn't really call her a hate watcher. Anyway, as a hate watcher who doesn't call themselves a hate watcher, I knew that about Bethany. I think most of us did or do at this point. Like, it's crazy when I know more about someone than the person who's supposed to be interviewing her. And then they go and play pickleball, a sport which we cannot mention on this channel without showing this majestic video of Paul. I love it so much. I don't know what it is. This video just... oh, it makes me giggle so much. I love it. I am still very confused about pickleball though. I'm not a sport person at all. Is it just tennis with smaller, harder rackets and a slightly smaller court? Because that's what it looks like, but I don't know. And then this is followed up by a really awkward penis measuring contest between Dave and Paul. Not literally, but metaphorically.
For us, Dave, like a cool CrossFit move.
Yeah, I can knock one out for you.
See what you got, dude.
I can flip up from my back. I just learned how to do this.
Oh, don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself.
This would hurt, Paul. Whoa! That is CrossFit.
They got it.
Here, let me try to match it.
Oh yeah, you.
No.
No, okay, I won't do that.
No.
Just try something.
You are gonna hurt your back.
Okay. Oh, I'm not gonna do that. I just.
He's gonna kill his back. What is happening? What?
Oh, he's down. Dang.
Whoa. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Bethany, we've talked a little bit about like how you and Kristen have grown in your views and whatnot, and I feel like you all get pushback for growing.
I mean, the pushback for growing probably comes more from Christians.
Yeah.
Because they're like used to us being a certain way, and they like the, I guess, the more conservative black and white version of us. We've been accused of, you know, like conservative Christians are like, we can't follow y'all anymore. You're basically like becoming feminists. And it's like, have you seen like all the stuff we're posting?
Yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all, actually. And it's definitely about more than just like, oh, look, some Christians don't like people doing different things. I think it's about reacting to a threat and trying to quash it. Because especially for the Christians who have spent so long indoctrinating kids and now they're growing up and kind of questioning that questioning is seen as a threat to their entire system, you know? But I guess what kind of annoys me as a viewer on the outside a bit is how what people are pushing back against Bethany for is exactly the same as what Bethany, Kristen, Paul and Morgan do to others, just in regards to a different topic. So where Bethany is stepping out of the box regarding purity culture, and she's getting backlash from the rest of her community for that, you get others maybe stepping out of the box in terms of things like supporting the LGBTQ plus community, for example. And Bethany, Kristen, Paul, Morgan, they treat other people who are doing that the exact same way people are now treating Bethany. But she can't see the hypocrisy here. Like, I know she doesn't really make videos anymore, but Brenda from God is Great, for a long time she was very vocally supportive of the LGBTQ plus community while still being a Christian. I think, if I'm remembering this right, B. Haney as well is very supportive, and she's a Christian, and you get a lot of people, especially Paul and Morgan, who call out those creators for being supportive because they're not proper Christians and me. And now that's exactly what Bethany's experienced, just in regards to purity culture and modesty and talking about sex. So if she can acknowledge that it's hurtful when people call her out for this, and that it's kind of damaging as a whole when people call her out for this, why can't she see that it's the same when she does it to other people, just about different topics? Do you know what I mean? So Emily Joy Allison writes a lot about this in her book, #Church2, where she writes, and sorry, my chair is squeaking as I move, purity culture is not just a self-reinforcing system, but a self-policing one. As soon as you start to let on that maybe you don't believe premarital sex is a sin, maybe you're rethinking your stance on LGBTQ rights, maybe folks on the pro-choice side have some good points, then people come out of the woodwork to draw you back into the fold by whatever means necessary, no matter how invasive, unflinching, or cruel, no matter how invasive or unflinchingly cruel they have to be. This is what Bethany's seeing right now, and this is what she's done to other people. Emily Joy Allison goes on to write, the consequences of questioning the sacrosanctity, it's hard to say, of purity culture are severe. You can lose your friends and your respect in the community. If you're employed by a church or a Christian school, you run the risk of losing your job. You lose your privacy and your peace online as your inboxes and DMs fill up with former friends calling you names and insulting your intelligence and implying threats about your eternal destiny. You might even lose your family. I did. And again, this is what Bethany says she's been seeing. She's had people she actually knows in her real life almost like threatening her with hell because they think they're saving her and calling her out for this stuff she posts about sex and marriage and relationships and pushing back against purity culture. And it's a real shame. But also, it's what she has done to other people in regards to content supporting the LGBTQ plus community, content supporting pro-choices, content supporting feminism, and so on. There's definitely a level of hypocrisy here that she's not aware of. And on the one hand, I'm sorry for her that she's getting this pushback, but on the other, I'm like, oh, well, maybe this will teach her something. But then it's clearly not, so it's just... it's frustrating to see. I do get that it must be difficult for Bethany because it must feel like now she is in a bit of a place of, well, where's my place, you know? If she's been rejected by the audience she pandered to for so long because she's no longer hateful enough, but she's still too hateful and unaccepting for essentially the opposite side, I guess, if you want to call us that, to fully accept her, then where is she supposed to fit in? And that's why I think this black and white thinking of us versus them, good versus bad, is so harmful because it doesn't give people a chance to grow at their own pace. If Bethany's currently feeling rejected by all sides, it's easy to see why her or someone like her might regress back into their more hateful beliefs because that's the easiest and quickest way to find your place again, you know? And that's something we want to try and avoid happening. If we keep rejecting her because she's not progressive enough, then any progress she has made will be undone. And ideally, we don't want that. We want to keep seeing her grow and be more accepting and become a really good person. At least I do. Don't know about anyone else.
It's kind of like a big claim. Like, you guys are becoming feminists. What are they going off of?
I don't know. Like, if we're not super hard on everything, like how a dating relationship be purity, just like anything, it's like it's not necessarily like feminist stuff, but they just view us, if we're not ultra conservative, then we have to be like feminist, you know, or if we're not ultra conservative, right, then we have to be deconstructing. Like, if we're not,
there's no middle ground.
Yeah, there's no middle ground. It's like very, very extreme. But at the end of the day, we're not trying to be like the Holy Spirit for people and tell people what they can and can't do.
See, I just have to say, like, surely she realises that she's been a part of this problem in the past too, like I was just saying a minute ago. The number of times that her and her sister have said stuff about how, like, you know, if you're not super pure and saving everything till marriage, then you must just view sex as meaningless and be sleeping around with everything that moves. She says it in her sex courses. She's been on this side of, like, almost punishing people because there's no middle ground and blah, blah, blah. What she said to people before is now being said to her, and I feel like this could be a really good learning experience for her and her sister if they were just a bit more self-aware, but they're not, and it bothers me.
People have specifically accused me of being like, oh, you're really becoming, you know, more of a feminist and stuff. Like, oh, Bethany, she's taking steps, she's almost there. And I always crack up because I'm like, what? Like, I am still like an extremely passionate, like, Christian. Like, everything I do is like coming from an extremely passionate Christian view. Like, I don't know what it is that makes them like think that.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Well, people are believing this because you can absolutely still be a Christian and believe in gender equality. Plenty of people are. My family members are. I think my sister-in-law, who is a Christian and thoroughly believes in God and has a lot of faith and everything, is also a wonderful feminist, you know? But people are now saying this about Bethany, and I've said it myself when reviewing her sex courses. She's brought up certain topics where I've been like, oh, she's so close to understanding feminism. She's so close to a feminist viewpoint here, because she is. As simple as that. Things like the way her and Dave take on quite equal, non-gendered roles within their relationship and their family. Bethany's push for sex education. Bethany's interest in business and entrepreneurship and encouraging women to work for themselves. In one of the sex courses, Bethany had a guest who was talking about the spectrum of, they didn't say gender, but they said of masculine and feminine energies. They were talking about how on some days people have more feminine energies and people have more masculine energies, and how in a good relationship you each have this kind of like quite a fluid relationship with your masculine and feminine energies, and you have this back and forth. You see? You have Bethany's focus on female pleasure being important, just to name a few things. I'm not saying she is a feminist, but in her more recent content she is definitely covering a lot of feminist talking points. Her sex course in particular, like I say, there were so many moments where she would go, so I'm not a feminist, but, and then raise a bunch of feminist points. I think what a lot of people forget, and what Bethany is forgetting here, or maybe just not realising, is that you don't have certain views because you're a feminist. You're a feminist because you have certain views. And she is starting to have those certain views. And I think it's just been ingrained in her head for so long that feminism bad. Feminism must be man-hating. Feminism is this and this and this, and feminism is a threat, and feminism. Whereas that's not true at all. Feminism is just about gender equality. It's about equality of opportunity, regardless of your gender. And that actually seems to be something that Bethany wants for herself, and is kind of promoting in others, you know? That's a feminist view. She might not like the label, but it is.
That's kind of what that's what the haters are hoping for. They want you to be there, so they're like, she's almost there, and then the Christians are like, she's there, she's too far gone.
But like the haters, they would only be happy if it were like a full deconstruction, and then like hating, going out and like hating Girl Defined or making apology videos or whatever. It's like,
yes, we're all just so hateful for hoping that someone finally understands that gender equality is important. So hateful. It is quite funny that Bethany should bring this up though, because this is exactly what I've been arguing against for the entire video, you know?
So, you know, we're talking about the haters. They say something like, Kristen and Bethany's views are still problematic, and again, these are the hate videos.
Yeah.
Still problematic, but I am seeing progress with them. From my research, I'm seeing a trend of that. How does that make you feel, and is that a good thing?
Now again, I don't call myself a hater, but I do kind of wonder if he's at least partially referencing some of my videos here, because this is exactly what I've said myself. The thing is, though, I'm not doing this to be hateful. I just think they're important topics to talk about. I think for everyone who starts spouting hate online, you need someone who is equally spouting love, I guess, and pointing out the flaws in those arguments and pointing out why they're wrong and trying to educate audiences on something that's a little bit more loving. I don't know. Words. I'm interested in hearing Bethany's response here, though. Give this a listen.
That they're saying that.
I don't take that as a compliment. I don't, well, because what do they want? You know, what is progress to them? We are really trying to have more of like okay, the gospel is the most important thing. Secondary issues, like instead of saying like this is the way, either that's our opinion or you know, and I guess they view that as progress, moving away I guess they view that as moving away from scripture, but the reality is we still have very strong convictions and beliefs. We just don't necessarily always put them out there in the same way. Maybe we're not as far as they actually think we are.
Okay, well, I can only speak for myself. I don't speak for all content creators who react and respond to you, but I can say I'm just hoping you become less hateful towards other people, less cruel, less judgmental of others, and more accepting of people, and stop promoting harmful beliefs. That's what I want. That's what I think most people want. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't care if you believe in a God or not, if you believe in the Bible or not. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't bother me either way, and I'm more than happy to just accept people as Christians, you know? I just want Bethany and her family and her ministry and the people she surrounds herself with to be nicer towards other people. I do find hearing this from Bethany to be a real disappointment, though, along with her kind of homophobic comments earlier and stuff like that, because I've spent this last year in particular giving Bethany the benefit of the doubt over and over again, trying to be encouraging, celebrating, thinking that she does want to become a nicer person, celebrating that I'm thinking she's becoming more accepting, celebrating that I think she's learning, only for her to literally turn around and be like, "Lol, don't be so stupid, I'm still mean and want to restrict people, ha ha ha." And that thoroughly disappoints me, and it does make me sad. I think it's quite cruel for her to be stood here laughing at us for thinking she might actually be a good person deep down. Hey, editing me here. I'm just going to jump in with this. There's a point here in the video where Bethany talks about the new girl-defined book that's coming out. She's like, yeah, you know, blah, 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 it's going to be happening, me. It's like getting right back to our roots, whatever.
I mean, Kristen and I have a book coming out in the fall.
Oh,
and it is,
shout out!
It is so hardcore girl defined, but in like the best way possible. And I'm so pumped about it. It's like everything, like, oh my God. Like if you have read the first book, Girl Defined, and you're like, wow, that was a lot, this book is gonna blow your mind. No, because it's like, it really is. Nice. So we're not going anywhere.
And then today, I think, or at least I saw it on Reddit, there was this announcement of like what the book is. And honestly, it just looks like 200 pages of pure transphobia. It looks like this whole, like, what is a real woman? What it really means to be a woman? The biological woman. It just looks like an absolute nightmare. It looks like absolute trash. So I feel like all this goodwill that I gave to Bethany while I was writing and filming and all of this stuff, like, she has just thrown it back in my face by being like, yeah, I'm going to show you all that I'm not a good person, I'm not a changed person, even if I am getting better in some areas, I'm getting worse in others by publishing an entire book about transphobia. It's just trash. Why? There is enough hate in this world. Can we just not?
How does it make you feel? Because I was watching a video today, haters, criticism videos. You guys get a ton of it.
Girl defined, once again.
Girl declined.
Girl defined 2.
Girl defined.
The new girl defined video.
Girl defined posted a video.
No, I saw a video. I know I did. 33 million views reacting to you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, first off, what do you think is so appealing about people watching videos on you? Like, why is there so much interest around you guys?
I mean, honestly, I have been trying to figure that out. I don't know if it's like the dumb blonde stereotype or if it's because like we're sisters. Like, I've wondered that. Like, why is there just like this explosion of people that love to make cringe videos about us?
Okay, so once again, a clip for me was shown here. So again, although I wouldn't call myself a hater, I guess I'm included in this. So I can only answer this for myself. I don't think Kristen and Bethany are dumb blondes. Maybe they did come across that way a little bit in the beginning, and it was kind of like easy to just be like, ha ha ha, how silly back then. Like, we're talking, what, 6-7 years ago? But no, I absolutely don't think they're dumb blondes these days or any other misogynistic stereotypes like that. But I do think they spread a lot of incredibly harmful misinformation, and I want to be a part of correcting that. One thing I've always done, like even back in the day, was talk about how, like, I felt Kristen and Bethany had a big audience because, you know, they're these beautiful women, they're really bubbly, they're really energetic, they definitely appeal to the young girls they were trying to appeal to. And I've always kind of, I don't know, like, given them credit for that and been like, yeah, well, you know your target audience and you know how to appeal to them. But that's why I think it makes their misinformation all the more harmful, because they wrap up all this hatred of humans in this, like, beautiful, attractive, ha ha ha, we're just so giggly and fun package, you know? When you have a person sat there, like, I don't know, angrily banging on a table, being like, ooh, them damn gays, it's kind of easy to dismiss it and, you know, be like, oh, well, they're just being hateful, that's silly. But when you have these two, like, young, beautiful women being like, ha ha ha, we just care about people so much, and that's why we hate the sneaky gay agenda. Ha ha ha, don't you agree, sis? Oh, I totally agree, sis. And it makes what is a very, very hateful and harmful message almost palatable. And people don't necessarily realise how much hate they're taking in, you know? So I want to be a big part of combating that and correcting that. We can't just keep allowing misinformation or half-truths or incomplete information to be presented as fact without showing the other side and as sitting here saying, well, actually, here's what people who study this in the real world say. Here's what the facts say. Here's what the science says. Here's how your words affect real people and why it's doing harm and why you need to change. Do you really think I would make like a 6-hour-long video about a sex course if the only content was lol what a dumb blonde? No. I had to go through the information bit by bit and pick it apart and provide actual sources from experts who do know what they're talking about to combat the misinformation that Bethany was putting out there. Now, I mean, perhaps mostly what Cody Co and Noel were doing, don't come for me, was a little bit of that lol dumb blonde stuff. I know, Cody Co has a lot of fans, but let's not pretend there was actually anything of substance in his video. It was just a giggle at the expense of what he thought were some silly little women, let's be honest. But compare his video with the work of someone like Jen from Fundie Fridays, or B. Haney, or even my current content now, like, and we aren't doing that. We aren't lol what a silly woman. We're trying to focus on the claims being made, talk about where they're good and bad, show where they need improvement and how to improve it, and I feel like Bethany maybe doesn't understand that. I maybe can't fault her too much because, you know, maybe she has seen the most popular videos by, like, you know, Cody Co, where it's just like laughing and me, and she maybe thinks all videos are like that, so she doesn't want to watch any of the others. I can't blame her for that. But it's like, you know what this reminds me of? And sorry to bring up Gabby Hanna again, but this is like when, basically I made my first review of Gabby Hanna's poetry book way back in the day. And I was like, okay, here are the poems, let's compare them to other poems who are doing similar things, but they actually do them well. And I tried to make it a bit educational as we went along. And then James Marriott comes along, and he's just like, let me read out this poem and make vomiting noises. And then Gabby somehow was absolutely fine with James's video, and was friends with James, but then called me, like, an ugly bully, abuser, bitch, with no talent or intelligence, when I was the one being fair and James Marriott was the one being a misogynistic douchebag. I'm sorry, I don't like him. And it really bothered me at the time to be bundled in with the likes of him, because the amount of work that went into my content and that series of videos I did was so much more than his, I'm gonna read out a poem and then make some vomiting noises. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's kind of similar here. Like, I don't think you can put, for example, Jen's videos, which are so in-depth and so well thought out and so much care and time and effort goes into them. I don't think it's fair to make a comparison between that and say Cody Co's video where it was just him and Noel sat down going, huh, bro, can you believe these bitches? I mean, okay, maybe they didn't say bitches, but you know what I mean. Huh, bro, can you believe these girls? You know what I mean? Yeah. Sorry, this bothers me. Anyway.
What do you think? Oh, what do I think? You guys were some of the first ones, and you guys were, okay, you all are very bubbly. You're very bubbly,
energetic.
Like I already said from jumping in the podcast with you guys, you turn it on and it's like, well, like high energy. I wonder if some people would say like they're making their lives look so perfect and bubbly, and it comes across fake.
People have said that, which is, it's who we are online and like on social media and stuff. Like, it really is like a very accurate representation of like our personalities.
I do not think Paul could be more wrong here. I feel like where we're at now, in terms of understanding Girl Define's content and what we see, I don't think anyone thinks their lives look perfect. No matter how much they've tried to tell us they are in the past, I think a lot of the people who respond to girl-defined are actually bubbly and energetic in their own ways. It just comes down to the fact that we don't want misinformation and hate being spread. We want to combat it. That's all. I think Paul's wrong.
People also have a lot of other misconceptions. Like, people think our family's like super wealthy, or that we were just handed everything, and so we're extremely spoiled, like these privileged kids. And we've talked so much about, like, our parents literally moved to Texas with like $300 and their like really old beat up car, started a business from scratch that provided for all 8 of us kids. Like, we grew up in an extremely small house, always drove old cars. Like, I don't know why people think we're just like these super stuck up, like fake plastic people. It's like, where'd you get that idea?
I found this interesting, and I think it's because, one, her super small house was absolutely not super small compared to what most of us grew up in. She also had things like, you know, her parents were running their own business and giving them all jobs when they were old enough, and, you know, they had enough money to raise 8 kids. That is a wealthy family, whether you recognise it or not. Like, my family's annual household income was under £9,000 a year. Like, for everyone. So we're talking 3 kids, 2 parents, 2 grandparents. The fact that her family even had access to things like cars, and for their kids to do extracurriculars like playing basketball and stuff like that, means they did have a lot more money than most people. I find it so crazy when rich people clearly don't think they're rich because, well, they're not millionaires. When in the real world, that's not really what rich is. Like, I feel like a lot of rich people don't realise how rich they are. It's like, couple of years back now, there was a thing about the government wanted to make a change in the UK, and for people who earn over £80,000 a year, there was going to be more tax on income over 80,000, right? And this one guy stands up and he's like, I'm a poor working class person, I can't believe you're going to tax me like this. And the MP was like, well, we're not, it's only going to affect the top 5% of earners in the population. And he was like, yeah, that's not me, I'm a poor working class person. And then the MP was like, wait, how much do you earn? He was like, well, I'm over 80,000. And they were like, yeah, you're in the top 5% of earners in the UK. And he's like, I'm not, I'm poor. And they were like, no, you're not. You have it better than 95% of people in the country. That's the energy I'm getting from Bethany here. Just saying.
Intimate wife.
Intimate wife.
The Intimate Wife Instagram. Well, okay, first of all, you started on your own Instagram page.
Yeah.
Making content all about sex. I'm saying it quietly because there are children around.
Get away from the children.
And you ended up like basically like being thrown in Instagram prison, first of all.
Yeah.
So that's insane and weird. But you also, I feel like, probably receive a decent amount of pushback from Christians being like, you're being way too edgy, you're being way too open about sex, and you're taking away from the gospel. Like, you're taking away from what you could be discipling young women on. How do you go about that, and like people telling you how to run your platform?
People have a lot of expectations for what, like, I should say, for what Girl Defined should say. I would say, like, the majority of the response has been largely positive, but there's probably like 20% of people who are Christians who are very passionate that I shouldn't be talking about sex, and that this should be something that's specifically just between like a husband and wife and the Bible, and that it's extremely inappropriate for me to be talking about it. And like, I'm super careful not to share like intimate details, like, and then this and this touch, but
just gonna cut in here to say, no, she's not. She made a post about Dave performing oral sex on her on Thanksgiving. Let's cut back to past me talking about this, because I've spoken about it before. Like, I think marketing is one of her biggest issues, because she stumbles at the first hurdle in that she doesn't really understand or know who her target consumer is or what they want. So how can she appeal to them and give them something that provides value if she doesn't know who she's providing for? So take some of her recent Instagram posts, for example. This one was where she was like, when you ask your husband what dish he's most looking forward to eating at Thanksgiving, it wasn't the turkey. So she posted this reel everywhere recently, and to summarise, it's a video of Bethany curling her hair while straight up telling us that Dave is gonna go down on her over Thanksgiving. Yeah. Now, many of her followers called this out. They said it was making them uncomfortable, and her reply was, well, this is for married women. If you're not married, you might be uncomfortable. But she's completely missing their point about why they were uncomfortable. As a sexually active woman myself, although not married, but in a long-term partnership, I was also made uncomfortable by these posts, not because the idea of sex makes me uncomfortable, not because the concept of oral sex makes me uncomfortable, but because I don't need to know these specifics about someone else's sex life. That is too much information, and this is what her audience were complaining about. It's not the fact she talks about oral sex that's a problem, it's that she brags about getting oral sex on very specific occasions. So now anyone sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner is just going to be thinking about Bethany and her husband having oral sex. That's what makes it inappropriate. Some of her followers told her, "Oh, this made me uncomfortable. I'm married and this is TMI. I'm married and I don't want to hear about other people's sex life. That's really gross. Keep it in check and honor your spouse. This is weird. Her stuff makes me very uncomfortable. To make her whole social media brand based around sexual things between her and her husband, I feel it pushes a boundary. I'm all about being sex positive for marriage, but I believe that there are things that should remain intimate between you and your husband." But Bethany seems to think it simply comes down to, well, I have sex and they have sex. We're all part of this sex-having club, right? So of course they want to hear about my personal experiences, don't they? They don't. No.
Like a lot of these Christians act like I'm literally like writing an erotic novel. That's definitely not the heart or the goal, to be like super graphic, but I guess what I do post, a lot of people would consider to be extremely graphic and erotic. So we just have different definitions of what that would be.
That's true. And I feel like a lot of Christians feel that way because they did not grow up talking about sex. And that's, you know, one of the reasons you're doing it is for those people who want to learn, who have that desire to have a healthy sex life.
Right, yeah, and as I've always said, I think Bethany's goal is absolutely a noble one, and I thoroughly agree with destigmatizing the conversations around sex education. However, I think there are a number of problems. For one, Bethany oversharing her own personal experiences, like with the posts about where and when and how she's going to have sex with her husband. Posts about what her husband is attracted to. Like, we don't need to know that. If you want to share sex positive content, you can do that without you having to be explicit about your own sexual needs and desires, because that just kind of comes across as exhibitionism more than anything like that. Two is the fact that Bethany still won't acknowledge the role that she personally had in promoting purity culture in the past. And three, the fact she still promotes plenty of miseducation and misses out a lot of really important topics. Like, she never covers topics like consent, specific details of using birth control. She shames all non-cis hetero monogamous couples and plenty more. You can't be sex positive whilst excluding a massive chunk of the population. You don't necessarily need to direct your content at those groups if you don't know about it. If she wants to make a sex course for cis straight women, that is absolutely fine, as long as you acknowledge that other people do exist and that that's okay and normal too. When a massive chunk of her course is shaming other people for having a different gender identity or sexuality or preference, or, you know, she just refuses to acknowledge that asexual people exist, for example, that's when it becomes a problem. And four, bonus one, some of the guests that she uses to teach on her course are super dangerous people, like the couple who used their own baby as an anatomical doll to find the clitoris so that they could have better sex. This feels like assault and abuse, and it's not okay. It's disgusting. If you want more specific details on this, then I do recommend the 2 videos I did on Bethany's sex courses, so please go watch them. They'll be linked down in the video description, along with all my sources, further reading materials, further watching materials, and stuff like that.
And my question is though, like, okay, if other Christian women aren't talking about sex, who do you want talking about it? Right. You know, do you just want it to be Google? Like, do you just, like, realistically, and the part that's hard for me is, you know, I see these hundreds and hundreds of women who go through the course that I created, the sex course where I interviewed all these experts, and I'm like, they're literally paying money to go through this. There's a need, you know, like they need this and they want this. So you might be over there like complaining, like, how dare you? But there are so many women who have had years of struggle, and it's like, where do you want them to go? They've never felt like they've had anywhere to go. Like, shouldn't we be celebrating that there are more Christian women talking about this rather than trying to like silence them?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, again, I agree with this. There is a need for good sex education, especially amongst fundies and people who've been brought up surrounded by purity culture and have never received that education. However, I'd rather they receive that education from an actual expert instead of paying Bethany and her underqualified guest speakers for that advice. If you are interested in learning more yourself, then I have a huge list of book recommendations and resources available in this video description, and if you support me over on Patreon, I have a big, huge master list of all the sex education books, all the feminism books, and what else is there? Basically, all the books I've referenced over the last, 6 months in videos. I have a big, long, alphabetical master list of them all available over on Patreon for you guys now. Otherwise, you can just find them all individually in the descriptions and stuff for each individual video. Yeah, okay, anyway, and then Bethany brings up the Thanksgiving post that I have also referenced.
Has there ever been a reel or post that you've made and after posting it and getting comments on it, you're like, okay, I went too far on that one?
I post things.
Shameless.
I post things and I don't think that they're a big deal in the moment.
Yeah.
And then later it turns into a big deal. So I posted a reel.
Yes.
And I'll say it and everyone's gonna be like screaming. It was about Thanksgiving.
I knew you were gonna say that one.
We talked about that one.
I literally saw it pop up on my phone and I said, Morgan, look at this.
Okay, I did not think about it. All I said is I asked Dave what his favorite dish was for Thanksgiving, and he said me. And I did not think it was a big deal. It was just written on the text. I wasn't doing anything, so I'm like, I wasn't graphic. I just thought this was like a funny kind of spicy married wife joke.
You knew it.
I am genuine.
Like, I believe her that she didn't.
I promise 100%. I didn't, when I posted it, I was not thinking like, this one will be a controversial, like this one is gonna, that's what happens. Like people, the ones, I do that sometimes. Yes, I do that. But like with that specific post, I was not doing that.
Yeah.
Like I was not doing that. But there have been posts where I do know I'm being like, poking,
Spicy.
whatever. When I posted it, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And then later I was like, wow.
Okay,
Like people really didn't like
it's
that.
still
Is
up.
it still up?
Yeah.
Can we share it right then, just so people can?
Oh, we'll plop it in.
I feel like we got to, and then people can take it how they want.
I really didn't though. That's a genuine. I get people's perspective on it, but like I still think that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm not ashamed of it, and I think that we need some humor and some fun in the conversation too, or else it's like, you know, how about passionate marriage? You know, it's like.
So yeah, I mean, I remember when Paul showed me, and I was like,
you were shocked?
Well, my
I
mind
was like, too much visual.
because
Stop the brain.
because you had made a post in the past, and I appreciate a lot of your posts because I'm
Yes.
like I appreciate that she's willing.
He does.
I do. I appreciate that she's willing to destigmatize something for the Christian community that some of them have a really hard time
So
with.
we're
that.
in full support.
We
Some
made plenty.
posts, I'm like,
I did not realize how controversial aspects of intimacy could be. Like genuinely, it's not until I started talking about like intimacy and you know, different things within intimacy that I realized like, wow, this is very divisive amongst Christians.
Oh my goodness.
In my mind, it's like, it's a husband and wife. Like,
yeah.
enjoy what you want. Like, why are we trying to, like, I do not get it. Like, if it's between the husband and wife and they're both on board, you're not bringing other people in, like, all of those basics, like, what is the deal?
Oh, come on. Like, I think the not thinking things through bit is the problem here. Like, even Morgan says it was too much information. I would not want to hear this about my friends either. Bethany then goes on to talk about people she actually knows, shaming her for things like using lube, and again, like, I kind of mentioned this briefly before, but, like, I do feel for her for this, and I do have to say, like, good job to Bethany for continuing to stand up for her beliefs and spreading this knowledge in the face of all this pushback from people she knows. I do have to commend that. Again, the problem I have with Bethany, though, is that she never really gives enough information, so, oh god, still can't believe this. I went for dinner with my favourite band ever the other week, and it was amazing and it was wonderful, and I've been like their biggest fan since I was 16, and we went out for dinner with them, and then we hung out with them after the show, and we were like, I don't know, backstage in Leadmill till like 2 a.m, something like that, and we were all just chatting about stuff. And at one point, like, my YouTube videos came up in conversation, and and Brian was like asking about specific videos, and he says, what's the longest video you've ever made? And I was like, well, I would be the 6-hour sex course review. And I still cannot believe I ended up having this conversation with my favourite band. They're like the nicest, sweetest guys. They write songs about like nature and bird watching and sustainability and their families, and it's lovely, wholesome music, and I had a whole conversation with them about sex education. It was not what I expected, but they were lovely and they were listening so much. I was like, I'm so sorry, tell me if this is too much information, but they were really interested. They were so nice. But like one of the like they asked me like, oh, so like what, you know, like can you give us an example of like where she brings up a good topic but she doesn't discuss it in detail? I'm like, yeah, well, like lubrication. Like, this is actually a really big one, because she does the good thing of telling people that it's okay to use lube and that can be normal and that can be really helpful, but then she never actually goes into any detail, because there's things like there are different types of lubrication. You have water-based ones, you have silicone-based ones, you have lube specifically designed for anal sex, some that are better for vaginal sex. You can get lubes with different sensations. You can have the tingly ones, you can have the warming ones, you can have the flavoured ones, you can have normal ones, you might need a different one if you have sensitive skin, all this sort of thing. She never bothers to go into any detail about, you know, how and where and when and why to use each one. And then there's things like you can only use certain ones with certain birth control. So, you know, if you're using a certain type of condom, you'll need a certain type of lube with it, because otherwise using the wrong one could risk the integrity of the condom and it can break, and that can cause risk of pregnancy and STIs and so on. So there's a lot of information that she doesn't give. So the fact that she's talking about lube at all is fantastic and wonderful, and I commend her for it. But again, if she wants to be a sex education resource that people pay for, she needs to actually provide the information that's useful and not just say, use lube, because there's so much more to it than that. If this is something you're interested in, I provided a resource on this before, but I'll leave a couple of links in the video description as well if you want to find out a little bit more from people who are actually qualified in this stuff. But yeah, it was just very odd to be talking to Stornoway about that at like 1 AM. Not something I ever imagined myself doing. Wonderful moment though, loved it. Anyway, just as the conversation is starting to get really, really interesting here, Paul then derails it by interrupting to tell Morgan she's short. It's so annoying.
So it's just shocking to me. And there are people I know, like, we have had it out,
Really?
like, in the DMs, and they are just, like, they, like, basically,
Christians?
oh, yeah, like, people I know from my past
wow.
who have basically, like, come to my DMs to tell me, even things like using lube, like, that's, like, you should not, anything besides, like, the basic act is, like, wrong, you know? And it's just, like, where are we getting these ideas from?
It's true.
It's really crazy.
And then you just feel sad for them.
But all of those people claim, like, we've been married for this many years, and from day one, it's been the best. And you're just like, well, I don't believe it.
Hey, Morgan, it's so funny. You look very short.
Of course I do.
No, can we get a back to back? Can we get a back to back?
I meant to get a thing. We'll have to do this tomorrow night where I'm standing in between you and Kristen.
Oh, yes.
I'm 5'8", guys. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah, you're
that
pretty
short.
tall.
Yeah.
And this might sound like a rude thing to say, but I really feel like everything about this video would be better if Paul wasn't here. He's had one really good question so far, and the rest of it, I'm like, why? Morgan then is off camera at this point, but raises this really, really good point.
That's the fascinating thing about the sex advice content is we're all walking a line with it, and everyone thinks this is where the line should stop. And it's like, you're putting yourself out there with the hope of helping Christian marriage sex lives, and there's not a lot of content out there.
Yeah.
So you're taking risks, and I would just hope that the audience could give you some grace of like, I support you.
Yeah.
Oh, you went maybe a little further than I would have gone, but as a whole, well done.
Yeah. I don't really feel like there's that balance, you know?
Well,
Is that too much to ask?
That's the
Come
whole
on.
point of this project is like waking people up to see, like, you don't have to agree with how Bethany Beal does it.
Yeah.
But you can still support the fact that she is pouring into the kingdom, just in a different way than you would.
And I found this really interesting, and it is a good point. I thoroughly agree with it. Now, if only they could have the same perspective about, for example, same-sex couples and trans people. You don't have to want to be in a same-sex relationship, or you don't have to be trans or non-binary yourself, but you can still accept the fact that these people exist and are happy and content and are thoroughly contributing to society, just in a different way to how you are. Or what about on the topic of abortion? You don't have to want to get an abortion yourself to still support the fact that some people need abortions to be functional members of society, to save their own lives, to keep, their mental health in check, to just be who they are. You don't need to want an abortion yourself to know that we need abortion to be safe, legal, and accessible, and affordable. You can apply this argument to so many things that Paul, Morgan, Kristen, and Bethany are against, and it's just very frustrating. Then it comes to the scene of them all having dinner, and this is kind of the final scene in the entire video, and on the one hand, I hate watching people eat, so this is very, very uncomfortable for me. On the other, it was actually quite nice to see a couple of moments of Bethany and Dave interacting, because, they do genuinely seem to like each other and make each other laugh, and it's quite nice to see. Paul, however, in this whole in the whole video actually, seems kind of, I don't want to say full-on combative, but definitely he's almost quite wary of Dave. I don't think Paul respects Dave. It's strange and it's uncomfortable to watch. There's some stuff in here about Bethany talking about dealing with miscarriages and her younger brother and keeping your faith through all that, and that's quite nice. I have no complaints about that. I think that's a really good bit to include. But then Paul brings up how some people worry about Dave and Morgan not being happy in their respective relationships. And now I will say there is a reason why people worry about this. One is that Morgan always seems miserable and angry, and we know she's had a lot of mental health problems in the past, and so that's where the worry stems from. 2, we've seen how Paul treats her, and it's not very nice. 3, we've seen how Morgan treats Paul, and it's not very nice. And 4, with Dave, it's because he's literally come out and said he was miserable and having suicidal ideation, and that's why people worry about him. So I get where the audiences are coming from. These aren't just like, oh, I prefer this one, so I'm gonna assume they're miserable. It's, no, we've seen these people acting miserable, saying they're miserable, we've seen worrying behaviours, we're worried, At this point, Dave tried to respond, but there was like a lot of laughing and speaking over each other and a lot of echoes in the room, so I couldn't actually make out any words he was saying in this bit of the conversation. I'll play it to you, so if you can hear what he's saying better than me, please tell me in the comments, because I've listened to this too many times and it's just noise.
You'd say is your favorite, who would it be?
Mostly I listen to Megyn Kelly, and that's about it.
Okay. Megyn Kelly.
I like her individual.
Don't you dare say anything bad about Megyn Kelly. Don't you dare! People online like to decide which one they're going to agree with more than villainize the other person. And I was kind of reading comments on a video and I saw, I hope Bethany's husband finds happiness.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
That's been our story. I hope Morgan finds happiness.
Yes.
And when you hear it, freedom. When you hear that so many times, it can start to.
Oh yeah, sometimes I feel sometimes I feel a little sorry for myself. Yeah, 100%. It's not.
Expound on that if you don't.
It ain't king energy, but it's something.
It's not what?
It's not king energy. It's
okay.
It's not. It's
king energy.
Already feeling sorry for myself, and then hearing one of those and be like, "You're damn right."
Wow.
I got a man.
Morgan goes on to call people who are worried about her total idiots, so that's nice. But Morgan does say that Paul does cut her off a lot in conversations, and Paul responds with this barely veiled anger. It's very awkward. I don't know what I would do if I was in that room, but I would rather not be,
But that's a scary thought for me if I were to think, like, Morgan's over there thinking...
It's possible for someone to feel bad for them, still feel sorry for themselves.
Have you felt that way when you get all these messages of... No, let's be real, of messages of you. Morgan, what is it? I hope Morgan finds happiness. And that's said in so many different ways.
I would say that
Please say no. Please say I'm being real. I hope these aren't sticking with you.
We're going to have a check-in.
Morgan can do so much better, that type of stuff.
No. None of that that stuff is, I've never been like, oh,
and then we're getting
right.
back to you guys.
And none of that stuff about like, you're being mentally or emotionally abused. Like, I'm like, you guys are idiots. Like, I'm sorry, but idiots. Total idiots. But I will say there have been times when like, maybe someone has said something of like, I'm trying to think.
Oh no. Where's she about to go with this?
What is it? Well, okay, this is just something that like Christians and haters will say of like, Paul cuts you off when you talk. Like, he's not like listening. Like, he's not respecting your voice. But they like take it deeper and they're like, it's because he doesn't respect you. Blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's the case, but I am like.
But then do y'all talk about it? Like, are you like, why do you cut me off?
There are times when, like, after a video, I'll be like, hey, like, you cut me off a couple times. Like, can you chill out? And he's like, you're right. Like, I'm so sorry. I'll chill out. And he does. He does a good job of that if I point it out.
It's just like the way people take it deeper and they're like,
Yeah, no, I've never sat around and been like, oh, they're right. I am in a terrible marriage. He is the villain.
Are you finished?
Yes.
The next clip I feel is very revealing, but I'm not quite sure how to respond to it all.
Stuff online, I think the part that gets, like the comments and all of the messages, like I'm the villain, you know. And I think the only time it gets frustrating for me is if just being honest, is like when he's like, it starts interacting with them and sometimes I feel like starts like, oh, like they're actually really nice people and all of this, and almost like it feels like it's now like them against me. And it's less of like he's not upset or mad at me or anything. It's just more like, oh, we should be sympathetic. But at the end of the day, it's like, in some of these cases, I feel like these people really do want they do want to see our relationship fall apart. Even though they might be like, we hope you and Bethany stay together, they don't really hope that. Right. And that's kind of become apparent with a lot of these people that it's not.
Now, I completely understand and can relate to Bethany here, and I understand how upsetting it can be when you don't feel like your partner is on your side, especially when it comes to someone she feels hurt or upset by. I completely get where she's coming from here. I do get that. However, the last part feels like it could potentially maybe sort of be, I don't know, like paranoia and projection on her part, or maybe it's just because I'm too literal. But if I say I hope they stay together, it's nice to see these moments between them. They seem to make each other better people. That's because I mean that. I wouldn't say that about a couple that I genuinely didn't think worked well together. That's why I've never said it about Paul and Morgan. Because I don't think I've seen any real moments of them actually just like enjoying each other's company and seeming genuinely happy with each other. I don't think I've ever seen that, whereas I have with Bethany and Dave, you know?
And so I think that's frustrating because I really don't believe they have pure motives or pure intentions or really care about either of us.
Right.
And so it's, to me, that's frustrating if there is, and this just be like being real. I want to feel like my man is like standing up for me and like he is like, you know, forget them. They're like, why are they coming after my girl? And so when you're like compassionate toward them, it's kind of like, how could you? Yeah, it makes me like, I feel bad. Like I choose to, but it's hard.
Yeah, so in order to deal with that, because I don't want to, one, compromise my own integrity by dropping the fact that I think that a lot of these people are not as evil as sometimes we talk about on the one hand, but I also do want to be a very strong, rock for Bethany and stand up for her as her husband and all that. So typically my solution has been just to not talk, not have those ongoing conversations.
It's hard because we do
have different views about this.
I guess it's hard for me if I feel like, okay, you're building relationships, man, woman, I don't care, with people who hate me. I mean, it's like, I can imagine if I'm in your shoes, like it's got to be nice to be the one with that they really like. And then if you're feeling frustrated at me for some reason, like, yeah, you are kind of right. It's like, I can imagine if I were in their shoes, whatever, it's got to feel a little bit good to be the one that they like.
Now this I found was really hard to watch. I do absolutely feel for both of them here, and I don't really know what to say or what kind of solution to offer. All I can say is that if I were one of the people Bethany is referring to, not that I've ever spoken to Dave, but if I was one of the people that she thinks wants her relationship to fail, and that I'm evil and whatever, then I hope she can start to see that that's not the case. I know I absolutely don't hate her. I think a lot of people who maybe support Dave don't hate her. I definitely wouldn't wish misery on anyone. I wouldn't want to see anyone's relationship with potential fall apart. So I hope this is a problem they can resolve, you know? I know when I'm feeling bad about stuff that people say online, then I do always go to my partner, and I always go to Kieran, and sometimes I will ask him straight up, I'm like, am I in the wrong here? And I know that he'll always 100% tell me the truth. And sometimes this means him saying things like, well, actually, you know what, you could have said this a bit better, like maybe try this or this. But then if he's like, no, you're absolutely fine, he will tell me that and support me 100%. And it is such a big help having someone like that who is there for you. So I do hope Bethany can get that same sort of support, because this is a tough job to do for anyone. And comments and stuff online can be very overwhelming, you know? Yeah. Sorry, I feel like my brain is getting foggy at this point. I'm very tired. And I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah, I think they kind of see, from some of the videos I watched, I think they kind of see you as more progressive in your views and more open-minded, where they would they would look at Bethany and be like, Bethany looks at the Bible and she proclaims what she sees to her following, and it's pretty black and white to her. And Dave is over here kind of looking like the mediator, like he's kind of coming our way. He doesn't see things so black and white. He's a very nuanced man. I think Dave could come our way. They're kind of, I think, rooting for you when they feel like with Bethany, like, she's probably never going to, but maybe we could get Dave. So I could see how that would sting for Bethany in particular, of like these people, maybe they're not all horrible, but they're not looking out for our marriage.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like they would like to see me. They would love to see you leave me and go off and do something, and they'd love for my life to just like, they don't just dislike my message. Yeah. They don't like me.
That's largely, I think that's largely true.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel good for me to see you like, trying to like, I don't know, build these relationships as they're proactively telling you, like, we want you to have a happy marriage, but we would be, we understand if you need to leave.
Yeah.
Okay, again, I can only speak for me personally, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I am not part of that group. I do not think or wish any of those things, and I'm very sorry for Bethany that people do think like that about her. This whole thing, though, is very uncomfortable to watch, because it feels like we're seeing a private argument which we shouldn't be listening into. It almost has, like, Paul and Bethany kind of ganging up on Dave, and it feels uncomfortable to watch. I feel very conflicted. Dave tries to respond to all of this, only for everyone to interrupt him, and then he finally starts to talk, and Paul just cuts in again, and then suddenly the video cuts off and cuts to Bethany talking about something else. It's like, what was he trying to say? This is really hard to watch, and it's really frustrating to watch, and I feel like we're only getting half the conversation.
So, for me, it was so clearly, I was just like, you don't give one hoot or holler about me. You love the drama.
I think they love the drama. I think that's a part of it here.
I want to kind of, there's so much that could be said about
this. Is a lot.
I can see, the point is that I feel like there are some people in life, whether they're a fan or a hater or whatever, they approach social media or people they see online, and the ones they disagree with, they like really wish ill on them, and they hope and then there are other people who don't do that. And so it's like, my thing is like, the people who are actively on these hater channels or on these Reddits or, it's like, they have that gene of like wanting to see people like go down, wanting to see them demonetized, proactively coming against like their sponsors and trying to get them shut down.
I think there's a lot of that energy there, just like but I don't necessarily think it's unique to that group. It is conceivable, I'm not saying that they all do, but it is conceivable that the haters are willing to tell you things about yourself that nobody else is willing to tell you. Unless you have the type of people in your life that will call you out. And a lot of us surround ourselves with people who will not. In general, you shouldn't take advice from people who don't wish you well.
Right.
However, if you have integrity, you should be able to, you don't necessarily have to pay attention to haters, but you should be able to look past the fact that they're haters if they do happen to say something that is true.
I thoroughly agree with this bit, but I also know how hard this can be to see and do in practice sometimes. So while I think Dave has good intentions here, he's maybe not seeing how difficult this actually is for Bethany to be able to do. Not his fault, but yeah, it's easier said than done, you know?
I think that, I wish that y'all would more befriend people rather than choosing to view them as the kind of the bad ones or whatever. I do think that there is a road to that. But I think that you have decided to sort of play that us versus them game. I've started down the path of like befriending and like understand, you know, and I'm like, okay, these people aren't just sitting there like with some sort of scary, they're just people, and
are you directing this at their channel and our channel?
I'm directing it at,
which is fine.
I'm directing it at all y'all to the degree that you want to just kind of write off whole groups of the internet. And I get that it's personal. I get that you've received more hate than I personally have.
Yeah, and this is actually the exact same criticism I've had about the more leftist-leaning creators as well. Like, there's a lot of creating us versus them narratives where you just see people as a bad guy and don't accept them as human beings and individuals who can learn and grow. It's quite refreshing to see this being said on the other side too, because I think it shows how similar extremists on both the left and right can be. However, it's also disheartening to hear that they have the same problems as we do at those extreme ends, because it means finding common ground is going to be even harder, and finding some sort of resolution seems harder, because if these people are creating an us versus them and assuming we're all terrible, and these people are creating an us versus them and assuming they're all terrible, then how are we ever going to meet in the middle and help each other grow and learn? You know?
Yeah, I think the Reddit subthreads are, from my limited interaction or understanding, it's full of people who are reacting against all kinds of stuff that both has happened to them and that they have created in their own lives. And the reason why I'm like this is because I am like that in plenty of ways. I'm not willing to just write off whole groups of people because they say unkind things.
Yeah, exactly this. I think this is a more succinct version of the 8-minute ramble I had at the beginning of my TikTok bullying video. Go watch it if you haven't already. It was released this weekend. On Kyra's birthday, actually. She turned 11, my little angel. She had a wonderful day, ate far too much food and threw up some carrots at midnight, so great day. Bless her. She got so many toys. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this from anyone in this video, and I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised, and I agree. But then in contrast, Bethany makes an equally good point about parasocial relationships and how people online don't really know you and how it's more important to focus on real life relationships, which I also think is a very good point.
So I agree, I'm not writing them off, but I don't think the online space is the place to do that. When I meet people, which I've met plenty of them in real life, they'll come and say hi or whatever. In person, absolutely. I would love to talk to you. I would love to build a relationship with you, but it's just too hard. That's why I think you're right about people, when you're online, people, the lovers and the haters, they don't really know you that well. And that's why I think the biggest impact often comes from our real life relationships. Yeah. And that's why I'm constantly, through Girl Defined, encouraging people to have real life relationships, get involved in church, all of that. But if I were to meet any Redditors in real life and they wanted to actually have a genuine conversation, I am absolutely there for that. I hope to be able to have conversations with people who've made videos about us. I hope to be able to sit down and do stuff like that.
Somebody has to go first. Somebody has to be the first one to start a process like that.
She goes on to talk a little about people who've gone after her sponsors and stuff, and that's something that, again, I think is a complicated topic, because on the one hand, it's down to the sponsor to understand who they're working with and understand all their beliefs and if they want to be associated with that. But at the same time, I don't really agree with going after someone's income, because I think ultimately everyone still deserves a chance to make money and provide for their families and put a roof over their heads. So attacking people financially isn't something that I'd ever want to do personally, but I can understand why some people do it. It's a complicated one. And that's about it, to be honest. This is kind of where the video ends, and they just do a little outro, and it just, yeah, whatever, done. Overall, not the most well-made video. It was a little frustrating at times to watch. It felt a lot of the times when the conversation was starting to get interesting, it would just cut awkwardly to other things and you felt like you were missing out on big chunks of stuff. Overall though, yeah, some of the topics were interesting. I don't think this is exactly a super groundbreaking, dramatic, gonna change the world video. I think Morgan seemed a little more at ease than normal in this video, and didn't annoy me with her judgmental attitude as much as she sometimes does, but maybe that's just because she wasn't really in it that much. I don't know, hard to say. I do think the points raised at the end about humanising your opponents for lack of a better word, is a really, really good one and a really important one, and I think if anyone takes anything away from this video, it should be this. I thoroughly agree with finding more common ground and having real conversations with each other. I think that's definitely what I've been trying to do, especially over the last year or two with my own videos, whether I've been successful or not is another story. But yeah, I think it's a really, really good thing. Would I want to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with these guys? Paul and Morgan absolutely not, because they terrify me. Bethany and Dave, yeah, you know what, I think I would actually talk to them. I think it would be quite an interesting conversation. Yeah. But anyway, if you are interested in watching a little bit more on this topic, I know Jen of Fundie Fridays also made a video on this. It was like a whole deep dive into where Girl Defined are at now, and then it ended with a review of this video. I didn't watch it before writing this script, but I did watch it just kind of in between filming, so I filmed a chunk yesterday, watched the video last night, and then filmed the rest today. So I will link that below and recommend you go check it out, because as always it is a wonderful video from Jen. And for now, I would just love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and we're going to jump past me for the outro because I'm bad at this stuff. No, seriously, thank you so much for watching today. I'm just going to jump in here now with a little bit of self-promoty pre-recorded nonsense, because I always forget to do this. So if you did like this video, then please don't forget to leave a like or leave a comment, or both, because it really helps with getting more people to watch my videos. Feel free to share it around on social media if that's something you would like to do. And if you're new here, it would be absolutely wonderful if you would subscribe, or if you've been around a while, maybe just check you're still subscribed. That would be really great. Thank you. If you do want to see more of me, I do have a second channel where I post little vloggy bits, some little art bits, some makeup videos, just some little me ranting type bits, and also clips of some of my longer videos, so you can go check that out if you want. I also have a personal Instagram account, which is mostly me just posting my photography, my dog, my art, my friends, fun stuff like that. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can do that via either Patreon, where at the higher tiers you can get exclusive stickers and prints designed by me every 3 months, or you can go check out my merch, where I'm adding new designs all the time. My most recent one is this really fun Colleen Hoover t-shirt, which is like, I survived Colleen Hoover and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. I love this design, it's so fun and it makes me giggle every time I wear it. I'm also at the minute putting together some Colleen Hoover bingo cards for you that you'll be able to download free off my website, which is quite fun. So the next time we do a Colleen Hoover video, you can download one of the cards, play along, and check off the Colleen Hoover tropes as we go. It's gonna be really fun. If you want to check out my website and keep an eye for when they're available, it's just racheloates.uk. There's also a bunch of my photography on there, my art, some little rambling posts about makeup, some book recommendations, a little bit of everything. And just go have a look around if it takes your fancy. But anyway, if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you so, so much, and hopefully I will see you again very soon. Bye.